Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back. Hey, man, how's it going?
Live the dream. This is my first day in any building besides my house in 2 weeks. So quarantine life is
I,
new for me.
oh man, I am definitely envious. Yeah, it has been a homebound stay, and I think I was more prepared. I think for the first go round, maybe mentally, more so I think than I am kind of the second go round. For some reason, this just feels harder, more difficult. I'm just like I feel like I'm a mess. It's pretty much me wrapped up pretty much just like this.
No, I'm with you. It's been something I was thinking about earlier. We started this, and I've actually seen a few people who've introduced themselves. Hello, everybody. That have been on a few of our different webinars, and I think they've kind of gone on this beard journey with me through COVID. It just continues to get bigger and bigger, and so here we are. We're just a big old mess, and a lot of times when I think about this video, let me see if I can pull this up for you guys. Is really what I think.
And release all of those sounds that are trapped in your mind. Sir, are you okay?
I'm a little messed up.
That's amazing.
I think it's fair to say right now that we're all a little messed up.
I 100%. Oh man. Well, it's good, of course, to be seeing you. Anytime I get to see and interact with like real people, I find that like I am just beside myself, right? I'm super excited to be here. That awkward, how are we going to behave when all this is over?
It's going to be nuts. Hopefully they ease us into it. But what's really cool is, I mean, we know this, a light switch isn't going to switch when it hits 2021. It's not a light switch. And that's both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
Like we still have concerns. We still have things to do. So I'm excited to be here to talk about @Gym strategies and really jump into this. If you want to kick us off.
Sure, absolutely, definitely. Well, just to kind of get you guys started, we are, going to be taking questions throughout kind of the webinar. We will have a formal Q&A as well too at the very end. So if you ask it and we don't get to it, it kind of gets buried in the chat, which is right there. Then feel free to kind of pop it in again, and we can address it at the very end. But we'll try to make sure that we hit everybody before we're done. So, all right. Well, let's start this off with what we kind of all know, right? Bear with us. This is going to be painful for a little bit as we get started.
So everything in my life is on fire, but this is fine. So literally, I feel like this has been me the last 2 weeks, being on quarantine with 2 kids under 7 and a wife all at home and just dealing with each other. But it's all on fire, but we're fine. We're fine. We're moving along and getting through it. But what we hope is by the end of today, the fire's still going to exist. I can tell you that. But we hope you feel a little less engulfed when it comes to work stuff and maybe have a few takeaways that you are able to think about, to implement, or, talk to your supervisor about of how can we get a few more apps in right now? What are we doing? Why are we spinning our wheels? Can we start stuff? Can we stop stuff? What do we need to do? So it really is fine. I hate this saying, but I guess it's the new normal. But we're getting used to it. We're learning to play in our new play box. So we're gonna keep going. But one thing we will try to do, like some of you, we might recommend something. And you're like, dude, we've been doing this, and that's fine. I've learned over the years is to just put it out there, because things that I've done my whole career in higher ed, I said to a vice president of school, and I saw her lean down and start writing it down. I'm like, okay, yeah, I need to share these little things because every little nugget helps.
Absolutely, definitely. I completely agree. And feel free for those that are doing some really cool things. We're going to highlight some things that we've seen, but feel free to drop them in the chat. We're here, and I'm going to say it. We're all in this together. I again hate it too. I know it's awful, it's terrible, but we want to use this space as a collaborative opportunity and to do what?
Is that a High School Musical reference?
No, it's just I've heard it everywhere. Like I've just heard like we're in this together. And it's really bad when it comes from somebody who's like sitting in their mansion, living their best life. But yeah, we are definitely utilizing this as a safe space, for us to chat and to really just share ideas, because we all are, collaborators together. But let's talk a little bit about what happened. And again, this is the tough stuff to get through real quick. But where we kind of fell in fall of 2020, I think one of the more surprising aspects of it is everybody expected, or at least I did, and former colleagues of mine expected, really the small privates to really have a hard go at this, and that this was really going to impact it. It has some. But surprisingly, a lot of small privates actually did a lot better than they expected. And I think part of it, I was talking with a colleague, and she said, well, we were kind of built for this. Like, we were pandemic ready because of who we are. Small class setting, they're that interactive and small community feel to it. So they, I think, did a really okay job at the turn of the fall. Most large public schools, remain flat, which in a year like this is a good thing. I think one of the most shocking was the hard hit that our community colleges took. We saw a staggering decline of anywhere from 8 to 30%. This was just so unexpected. I think, in 2008, when we were in the economic downturn, community colleges thrived. People were going back and finishing their associates, going and getting more education. So I think everybody kind of expected that community colleges were going to kind of follow in the way of, graduate schools did, really grow enrollment. And instead, we found that the pandemic hit their population probably the hardest, and they were most influenced, most affected. And so I know community colleges are just struggling right now to get what they can. And then graduate program enrollment grew. And this was, I think, pretty expected, I should say. It grew, I think, more than people did expect. But I heard a great kind of saying that said, how the rich get richer, the educate get more educated. And it's so true. When an economic downturn happens, or in this case, a pandemic, if you're graduating college with your degree, the last thing you want to do is to jump into an economy that may or may not hire you. And so sticking around and finishing out that degree just makes sense at that time. And then for the most part, for-profits also remained flat. So a pretty scary fall, especially heading into our spring term. But this is kind of where things are going.
What do we know about fall 2021? And Josh, if you already said it, I just want to reiterate, like, some of our stats here we've taken from Inside Higher Ed, a bunch of different things, and free warning, they may not be accurate as of right now. Things are changing constantly. This gives you that ballpark, and we wanted to put stats in there so you could see it, but don't hold this to it. It's going to be approximate, and every day a new article comes out giving you the updated. But when we were preparing over the last month to give this presentation, nearly half the students hadn't started applying yet. So almost 50%, which is crazy to think about. But as we talk with all our clients and our colleagues out there, we're not surprised when we're hearing people are down 25, 30, 35% in applications at this time. One updated stat that I did see in kind of regards to that is about 30% still don't think they're going to be done by the end of December with their application. So, still a large portion of our app pool out there that aren't going to be done by the end of this month. And, I kind of just think of that constant pushback. Like, I'm considering December the new September, August, September, where it's the apps are revving up. But then in January, February, I feel we're on this cusp of apps starting to roll in. People are going to be more okay. Vaccinations are coming out. But with all that said, on top of that, though, students of color are being impacted more than as on a percentage more. So that's happening. International applications are significantly down as well, which, we can all understand that. The big one that I will hit on a lot, and we'll discuss a few times throughout this, is like students are feeling fear and anxiety. That is a real thing. 92% of students say this. And, with that, more women than men have acknowledged that. But, it's coming down. And actually, I think there's a statistic with me being in St. Louis that in the Midwest, it's that higher. Midwest female is the highest affected when it comes to feeling anxious or fearful about their future, about college. And as you go down the rest of this, students are concerned about applying in COVID, in a pandemic, which we'll talk about reasons why here in a little bit. More than a third are reconsidering college at this time, trying to figure out what they're doing. Are they doing gap years? What's going to happen? And Josh is really going to jump into right now the why. Why are these things important and why are they happening? And that creepy thing again.
I think things are just different than what we expected. And instead of kind of grasping at straws of why we think it, we really kind of went through some data. And thank you for adding that, Corey, that we did pull a lot of data. We pulled a lot of information. As you know, data is bad as soon as you pull it. As soon as you grab it, you know that it's going to be outdated. But we just wanted to include it to make sure that you kind of got a baseline of where things are. But what students are saying is that 72% of them wanted to actually physically visit campus, even in a pandemic. They wanted that experience of what the feeling of a campus is. This one I think is a big one, is they don't know how applications are going to be evaluated. 67%, majority of students are curious of, if it's test optional now, then how are you looking at my is it just my grades? And, my grades might have dipped because we've been virtual learning for the last, 8-9 months. How are we truly going to be evaluated when so much is in the air? They're really struggling to communicate with their college counselor and their high school counselor. Everything's virtual. There's nothing in person for the most part. So they're really just having a tough time of it. They can't get in with a college counselor. Again, 33% are trying to communicate or trying to say, hey, I need support, and they just are finding it difficult. We know, of course, everyone extended their deadlines. Everyone is pushing those out. So there's 1,000 different dates that are going through of trying to keep everything up. And something I've really been noticing, I'm a little bit of a secret shopper on a few colleges, and everything looks the same. Everything looks the same. It feels the same. There's so many applications that are out there, or there's so many emails that are pushing the application. Nothing else but apply, apply, apply. You don't hear anything of what campus is like, what school is like. It's just really always aggressively pushing that application. And us on the other side, we know why. We're down in apps. We need apps. We know why, but it's still all coming out of them at once.
Yeah, and we went ahead and pulled a few quotes because I think it really hits home when you see what students are saying, that it would be so simple if my teacher could just actually show me what to do. And if you go down learning styles, virtual learning is not for everybody. Visually learning, some people are tactile, they want to be in there and holding it, and so it adds some barriers to different students. I think if I were able to visit the schools, it might have changed my list. This is a no duh one. We know when students visit our campuses, that is a seller. That's where we hook, line, and sinker them. They know this is the school or not the school that they want to be at, and it helps do that. And so without doing that, or trying to do that virtually as best as possible, which I'm going to commend everybody for trying, because we had to do something. But it's not the same as getting your feet on the ground and seeing the people moving about. And then what do we write about, and how do I stand out? With soccer and lacrosse seasons canceled along with extracurricular activities. This one really hit home, and there were more quotes around it and conversations around this quote regarding students are feeling they've lost identity. Can you remember back when you guys were in high school, and guys and girls were in high school, and all of a sudden you really drew yourself into the groups and that support group. I was part of the football team. I was really big in student council, and we managed the blood drives, which aren't happening on schools. We're not at school every day of the week. My identity and my support group and my friend group might change a little because I'm not going to these things and not going to practice after school and not doing the events on the weekend. And they're feeling identity loss. And when you have identity loss and you're trying to stand out, it's really hard to write. And then, I feel like I'm knocked off my square. I can't ask anyone in my family, so I'm taking it one step at a time. Really, it's that level. If their parents are in a place where they're stressed and they're struggling, and students see this, they feel, even though that parents would be at a loss if they knew this, but the students feel like they can't go to them right now, and not always, or financially talking about college can be really tough if you're going through financial struggles, and college, as most people think, is not affordable and going through that. So there's just a lot of angst. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that we talked about going through their minds basically every hour of the day.
Absolutely. There's no break from it. It's like kind of how we feel times 1,000 for them. And it's just, it's tough. I pulled this, I was reading through some articles, and there is, if you go onto TikTok, there is a goodnight moon. There is some language behind it, so just forewarned. But I thought it was really interesting, and I saw this quote: while marketers love to describe their brands with phrases like world-class faculty or interdisciplinary learning, those phrases aren't top of mind for the average student. I know that, when we would go through, our paid digital, and we're choosing words to, when they Google them, that this is what pops up, and we want to be at the ranking, we want to be in the top rankings, for our amazing faculty. Well, students aren't searching for this. That's not the words that they're using. They're looking for the experience, and they're going to places like TikTok, and they're telling each other about institutions, and sometimes what they're saying isn't what we think our institution is. And this is what the example of TikTok was for, was that they're saying some things about some institutions, some really good, some not so good. So knowing what students are actually saying about your institution is a critical piece to this, to know how to kind of step yourself away from the crowd.
One extra layer that we've put in here, because when we get to like what can you do about these things, and some tactics, is thinking about the high school counselors as well. And depending on the size of that high school, I say high school counselor where I grew up, that was your if you're getting in trouble counselor, that was your college counselor, that was your having a mental breakdown counselor. They were a licensed counselor that did college work as well. And some schools now, they have your counselors and then your college and career counseling, but not all of them have that. So they want to receive information that is tailored specifically for them. That's true, and we know that's always been the case. But right now, they don't want just what you're sending every student as well. They want it tailored in a concise way. They have a help me help you mentality. They really do want to help. And they really do tell their students to visit before they enroll. They're recommending virtual visits as to support you, that help me help you. You tell me about what's going on, we're going to tell you. And they want to address, concerns, colleges to address concerns proactively and clearly. Most of these are no-brainers, but at the same time, they're starting to feel overwhelmed by all these one-off. We changed our date. We changed this visit program. We changed. And you're trying to help them by giving them more information, but every school's trying to do this because every school's freaking out trying to get their applicants as well. And then this last section is a real section, is families are starting to ask more questions about the FAFSA, especially even though we now, compared to the olden days when I did it, you had the prior year tax returns, but now we have the prior year. And so you got the 2019 tax returns are not matching what's going on right now in their household. So that's only added more to that process. There are ways around that, and you can do for supplemental, and you can file amendments to the FAFSA, but it's just more work, more things they need to do. So it's confusing students and their families, which then that means more work for the counselors that are able to support and answer their questions along the way. And then I think it might be covered, and I apologize, I'll make it big real quick. Like text optional, it's confusing. It's so everyday for us to hear this and know test optional. But even once it happens at a school, sure, we're test optional or test blind. Some schools will say that. I think, Josh, you usually say test blind more often than test optional. And I think it tells a story for us. Students don't know the difference. And we tell them you don't need to test to get admitted, but you could get a better scholarship where I was based on your GPA or your ACT, SAT. And if they didn't submit it, they're just going to get whatever their GPA says, even though their ACT might have helped them depending on where they fall. So, that's confusing to them. It's easy for us. We know the internal process, but when all these schools are, one, going test that optional on the fly, and two, changing what their process looks like, it's confusing. They don't know what it means, and just adding to how they're anxious.
Absolutely. And I think you made a really good point there is that, for us, it's normal. We're all freaking out on our own individual campuses. We're changing application dates. We're changing scholarships. We're doing virtual visits. I mean, that's one aspect that we're controlling. Whereas counselors, I feel like they're navigating everybody, right? They're almost like the gatekeepers for their students in a way that they're trying to not navigate one school. They're trying to keep everything together for all the schools that their students are interested in. So I feel like they definitely, and this is words that are coming specifically from them. They say that they don't need an hour-long webinar telling me that things are crazy and we understand that it's hard for everyone. We all are feeling that, right? But they really appreciate it when colleges get right to the point and are able to turn off their typical admission spiel and talk like us to peers. This one you're going to see a lot coming up as we kind of go further. This whole, I don't know if you all did it, but like at the beginning of the pandemic, I felt like in every email that I had to send, I had to ask like, how are you doing? How are you surviving the pandemic? We're all in this together again, and really be on those formals. But we've been through this enough that we're like, okay, everybody's doing terribly. Let's just get to the point, right? Can we just talk this through? And they're also saying so many emails. Everybody is sending out a ton of emails. And they would like for colleges to minimize how many separate emails they're sending as a high school counselor. There seems to be even more now that we're remote than ever before. Again, think of it as kind of they're the gatekeeper, right? That they are collecting all this information for their students, so they're getting overwhelmed. And they, of course, they say it's like trying to drink a glass of water from a fire hose, which I think, again, we all feel that way. But again, for them, it's times 1,000 because they're correlating all this together for their students. So this one is a tough one for me. We're not listening. And I say like this was to me, when I came to this realization, Corey, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but it's like when your mom says, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. The worst possible thing you could say, right? So the fact that I came to the realization that we're not listening was a huge, I was blindsided by the fact that we're not listening. They're telling us out of their own words and we're communicating. And I'm saying this as like a community. We're communicating almost the exact same way that we did previously when we all know the world is nothing like it used to be. I mean, everything has changed from here on out.
Yeah. So what are we seeing? And I'm sure most of you know this. It's virtual everything. Virtual visits, virtual Zoom rooms, virtual visits with the counselor. And we understand, and we're not saying all these are necessarily bad. These are things that we would suggest doing, or if you haven't done, if you can do at the school, waiving that fee, removing barriers is going to be a big thing. How hard is your application to fill out? What barriers stop students? Some of these will break that down and stop those barriers. But when we communicate that, every college is communicating it. So virtual everything, email is, we're down in apps. What are we going to do? We're going to send an email and tell them to apply. That makes sense. It's logical. We're reacting really quick and saying, we waived the app fee, apply now. Application deadline's now extended. No, the scholarship deadline's now extended. We're re-extending the application deadline. All these messages are going out there, and they're all done with the best heart. One, we understand that they're stressed. We understand what's going on. It's a lot to take. The one that was interesting, and Josh saw a few of these, being a secret shopper out there, is like, away messages when you email your counselor with the inability to respond. Now, COVID, if it's like I'm sick, is one thing, but just like we're not in the office, we have, it's weird because email can go anywhere with you, or like, hey, I can't respond to you right now. I'm reading applications. Some of this might be approved by your supervisors out there that did this. I would have been fired if I had a out of office message like that. Maybe a little extreme with fire, but I would have had to go to an office and had a conversation with somebody. And the same go. We're waiving ACT and SAT requirements, but what does that mean? Now there's essay questions in response to COVID-19. Trying to give them something to talk about how they persevered through that. There's a lack of understanding how applications will be truly reviewed. Josh talked about it. If you're test optional, test blind, and you're not taking my test anymore, and you're looking at my high school, are you just looking at my GPA? Are you looking at the classes that I took compared to my peer? My grades are a little lower, and we probably all heard this argument. My grades are lower, but I took all college level courses. If I would have just took the senior level course, I'd have all A's. And that's just the challenge that you run into. And so, and then the one thing that is probably covered up a little bit here is we're still selling the same affordability messages as you were pre-pandemic. So did you change the messaging about being affordable to message with the times? Like, yes, we still want to say we're affordable. We still want to make sure that they know this is truly an option. Don't let finances up front count you out. But how is that message being told? Is it the same like, oh, you're affordable? Or is it a real message that's really having a conversation with these students about how to move forward in the craziness that we're in?
Absolutely. And I think that that's a tough one, right? Like, it was another one of those aha moments of course, we're pushing affordability. But again, remember who you're speaking with. These are some of the students that financially, like, were needy to begin with, are probably really super impacted by this pandemic. Parents and families and students are losing jobs. Their family members are probably sick or have been sick. I mean, it has to change. I mean, the messaging just has to be very specific and just really make sure that you're hitting the right notes and not just the same old affordability aspect of it. And so these, again, we all know these things. This is stuff that, like, you're like, yeah, like, but what other options do we have? And it's, of course, this one, I'm like, no wonder I drink, right? Like, no wonder I feel terrible. And it's just, there's so many things that are going against us, and we know what students are saying and we hear it, but what do we do? How do we fix this?
Yeah, I know the feeling, the sitting in your chair in the middle of the night by yourself drinking. Yeah, it's a great day. So the thing is, the more I thought about it, there's probably many of us doing that. We should just get a Zoom together and all join a community and start talking while we're doing it. We probably fix world problems for it. So there are things that we can do to fix it, though. And, this is where we're going to start kind of high level and talk about things and dig into some tactical supports that might help you along the way. So first, you need to identify your challenges. And this is like no duh, like Corey, duh. But it's true. We're down in apps, but how are we down in apps? So one of the first things we said is segment your application funnel and analyze it. Do this historically over the last few years. What is going on and what are the areas that you're having trouble in? Is it specific to geographic regions? I was looking at a funnel the other day for a colleague of mine, and they were super down in Common App, which Common App keeps putting their updates out about where they're down, how they're down, and what's going on. But not only were they down in Common App, it was specifically in a major metropolitan area that their yield is relatively small. So while they are down in applications there, they were applications that historically wouldn't matriculate. While you don't want that, just to lean on it like, we don't need any more apps from there, at least you can know, like, okay, maybe that's not the pain point where we're not getting our completed apps. Maybe we need to look at some others. Are you missing it in your backyard? People are, depending on the area you live in the nation right now, students' opinions on moving away from home are changing. Some of them are wanting to stay within that I think, Josh, you read that 2-hour time frame that they're looking at this. And now, have you been just, resting on your backyard because, like, the students who are going to come? Should you be hitting them a little harder? Start looking at those data points as you go. If you need to know a little more and you have relationships with your students, interview some of the applicants about the application process, how it went, what were the bumps, find out what really happened in there. I always had a couple students and families that I connected with early on, and I knew I could go and ask them a direct question like this, like, hey, I'm just trying to get some insight. As you know, it's troubling times, and we're trying to help as many people possible. When you did the app, what were the issues about it? What didn't you like? What held you up that would have been helpful, and find out what those things are. Identify any potential pitfalls in the application. Are they essay biases? Are there, like I said, people are removing app fees. People are changing from essays to writing samples, graded writing samples. But at the same time, that's increasing the anxiety of students because they're like, oh God, which one do I submit? Because are they reviewing this for a lot of points? Will this graded writing sample get me in or get me out of being accepted? And so, with the Pitfalls application, do you require an essay? Are they able to access it via web? Do you tell them to sell yourself? Because that's just too vague. sell yourself is so vague. They want specific understanding of what's going on and that. And then, what are the things, you can review your application flow. And in this one, I want to make sure that say like application to flows to students. And if you have application flow to counselors as well, have you edited these already? Have you not? Have you changed the messaging to make sure, or are you just running what you ran before we were in the middle of a pandemic? Making sure you're viewing the messaging and what's being said, making it more concise, making sure it makes sense, making sure they're not, accidentally, which is a scary part with, automated communication flows, is there data that has changed since last year that you wouldn't have thought about updating, but you've, so many leadership groups are making decisions on the fly, like, yes, waive this, or yes, extend this, or no, you don't need that. And is everything actually making sense? And the same goes for digital, email, print, what is out there? And then the big one, what can we stop doing? I think the one thing we've done at the beginning of the pandemic, and some are still doing now, is you're just going, okay, I don't care, try something, throw it at the wall, see if it sticks. Be a little more strategic. Are there things that aren't working that you can go, you know what, we're putting too much effort into this right here. Let's cancel that and focus our efforts over here. And, they're thinking about creatively, what are your challenges, as we talked about, find specifically within the data. We had a research webinar, a couple of months ago, and it was the lowest attended, understandably so. Research is not sexy. We get it. But probably it's one of the more important things you can do. Do you have geodemography that you pay for that you haven't used? Use it. Do you have anything that says likelihood to enroll data in your CRM? You need to start using that. And even if you don't have some of the higher end, data like that, straight down to where are the hometowns that yield the best for us? And are we doing what we can there? Are we tailoring messages that are different for those who are within an hour from us than those who are 4 hours from us? So you don't want to go and sell how cool your hometown is if they live in that hometown. You should start it with like, hey, we know you know about this, but this is the added benefit of staying here. Instead of just saying, hey, you can go to these places that you probably go to now, and really getting that whole idea of what's going on.
Absolutely, definitely. And I mean, it's so important too, and we'll talk a little bit about this later because I think we've got a great example of, when you're talking about how great your town is and that you can do all these things right now, can you? Like, can you really go and do those things? And so you have to be really careful, and that's where your messaging, I think, is critical in terms of making sure that you do know what everything's going out there. And a lot of times, with CRMs, they're great, they're wonderful, they can automate a lot of that information, but there has to be a human behind it because things change, things happen, and you don't want to be selling something like your great hometown that you can't really do much in. So it's just really super important. And so you do the research. And again, like Corey says, research isn't sexy. It's just not the most fun thing to do, but it is such a critical piece to really set you up to where you understand exactly what's going on. And so what do? You create a game plan for each of your challenge, right? The whole point of segmenting and taking and pulling everything apart is when you identify what those challenges are, you can't now have one answer to all your problems. It's finding the silver bullet for enrollment growth, right? It doesn't exist. And so you really have to be very specific on how you handle these things. And like, pick off what's manageable. Don't choose how to solve the world's hunger problem right out the gate, right? What are those low-hanging fruit that says, okay, I can get apps to grow in this area? Really focus on those before trying to hit that like overarching challenge that you have. You've got to be personalized. You've got to revise and be transparent. Again, this goes back to everything that they're getting is exactly the same. All the emails are pushing to apply. But why is it so important to apply right now? And again, you don't want to go through a full history lesson of why you need to apply early, but you just need to make sure that you're separating yourself and you're personalizing it specifically for them. Again, you don't want to send a hometown, we're getting like, make this your new home, to somebody who's already living in your backyard, right? And so it's really got to make sure that they feel as though this specifically is meant for me. And you've got to educate your campus, right? You've got to, They're your support. They're your allies. They've got to know what's going on. And so I think it's super important that you share some information and some data. Don't give them everything. Again, you don't want them drinking from the water hose or the fire hose, I should say. You really want to make sure that you're educating them. And so that way, they can support you in aspects that maybe, you didn't immediately think of. And there's other things, you've got support behind you to be able to support you in getting, application generation and so forth. Don't leave out your students. Right now, students are craving that student-to-student interaction. That I honestly believe is probably even more important than application generation emails, is if you have some of your students, and you're rock stars. I can tell you right off at the gate at my last institution of my ambassadors, which one of our rock stars, and I can immediately know that's who's gonna be doing my calls tonight. Have them send text messages, have them send a phone call, because even a voicemail, they're not gonna answer it, but even the voicemail saying, hey, this is a current student, I'm in the theater program, I saw that you're interested in theater, can't wait to see you on campus. That is what they're craving. That is those authentic moments. That's what gets them to apply immediately straight out of the gate. That is gonna be the more impactful opportunity. You're going to want to create a solid matriculation plan, right? We all know applications are down, but you have applications. How do you enroll these students? It's going to be a critical piece that you need to really come out of the gate soon with. You really need to take this time and focus on what is my matriculation plan? How am I going to get these students to enroll? Again, look at the data of why they're not, but add that into there's a pandemic, economic downturn, and what can we proactively do to address these items?
Yeah, and Josh, on that, I think I've read recently, like, we'll find out real numbers after the whole cycle ends, but students are applying to 1 to 2 less institutions than they historically have. A number that had historically been going up and up are applying to more and more and more and more. It's dropped down a couple applications so far, and we'll see the final data, but that means, 1, your odds of getting that student are already a little better than what they historically were, but 2, everyone's still going to be fighting over their students. Everyone's going to go from, I'm going to call it big app gen, little matriculation. We're going to hit that tipping point where it becomes big matriculation or yield or summer melt, small app gen. It's still part of the puzzle because it's going to be a later cycle, but those two are going to have to happen at the same time. It's not app gen, then matriculation. It's going to be doing both, but just where is that shift in that conversation happening?
Absolutely. I think it's something really important that you said too, is we can't stop the application generation process this year because we know so many folks are so late in the game that there is going to be this kind of transition. So, as the springtime comes, yes, you are going to transition more into that matriculation, but it is a critical piece that you keep that application generation going and those communications still going, because this is going to be a late cycle for a lot of these students. And then, of course, call in the loony bin. Look for reinforcements. There are plenty of us out here that are really looking to support you. And really, we know the challenges they're facing. And so we really just want to say, don't be hesitant to reach out to us, whether you have a very small project or if the world truly is on fire and you've got a massive project and you don't know where to go. We're here to support our students and to support you as well too. And help is on the way.
Yeah, so there's some general recommendations, and this is where I was talking about. Some of you have tools to maybe do every single bit of this on your own and internal. Some of you have the tools that you're doing some of it internal and may need help with others. But some of our tips and reinforcements of things is, first and foremost, look at your digital and social campaigns. One, look at it from the organic site. What are you putting out at? What is the messaging? How are you showing your campus? And this goes right on with the TikTok messages that Josh is showing. And what's going on in Snapchat, what's going on in all these channels from students. So can you get quote unquote user-generated content from current students that's going to help in this application process? And then looking at the paid side of it. Are you doing paid targeting messaging? You could be doing IP targeting and looking at households specifically so that your message is getting put in front of students and parents at the same time. Getting from your list to paid advertisement, digital there. Are you doing targeting social messaging that's helping them, like letting them know exactly like, hey, you're currently incomplete application. All we need is this. If you have a big group of students that are incomplete and you want to make sure they know, hit them in social, get us some targeted messaging out there that they can go for a little bit further. And they've seen it, not only they've seen it from the emails that they're getting buried with, they're seeing it, maybe in display ads, in social ads. The next one we've talked about a little bit is with some clients and colleagues of mine is landing pages and digital view books. Digital view books are usually a little bit bigger of a build. They're, for lack of betters, it's not just your traditional flip book. It's more of like a microsite where it is personalized based on either a CRM integration, or they fill a little quizzes on there that content shows up. That might be a little bit big to build quickly and get some apps, but can you make a one-page landing page that is specific to what is going on? What are the new deadlines? What are the timelines? What, if you really need to, get down and dirty. What does test optional mean? In almost layman terms that still meet the, I guess you'd say, the legal requirements, that you're staying true to what it will mean to them. But how do you break that down? Get the jargon out of there. And these landing pages, instead of just saying like, go to the application, or, this is an email for the new extended application deadline, here's the email for the new extended scholarship deadline, it continues to point, say, if you need us, this is the place you go to. This is the one place. And this could be replicated and duplicated for counselors as well, like saying, we know things are busy out there. We look at that one page, counselors, just check out this. This is up-to-date information. If there's questions, feel free to reach out. But if you ever have a question, anything school related, here it is. Looking at chatbots to collect inquiries and drive applications. We'll actually, right after this, show you a little bit, a very simple, and I'm using chatbot generously. It is a very driven conversation. It looks more like a chatbot, but it is very close-ended. We ask them information and they reply, so that you're collecting those inquiries when they get to your website. And it's not just a website navigation tool. It really is about generating inquiries which drive actions and help them get to the next step. The next one I talked about, this we've done for a few schools already, and it's really helped, is this incomplete application survey. So, my previous institution, we went from, we'd have a few, I have two incompletes in my eyes. I have what I call the unsub, people who start the application, they log in, start it, but never submit. And then the incompletes are those who submit but don't submit their additional documentation. They're both incomplete in one way. There's a survey tool using a similar chatbot feature that we have, that it drives the conversation like, hey, did you know are you still interested in applying to X school? Yes. Then the conversation is, do you know what you're missing from that school? Yes or no? No. And then it can help that conversation. And it's very specific to that incomplete app. It is a thread that's built where they're asking, and that information can come through this incomplete survey and go forward from there. And then tied to that survey is communication check-in and content creation. So Josh already said it, everything's starting to look the same. Everybody's saying to apply, but where can you change your communication to personalize? So the first thing I always ask is, what data do you already have from students that you've collected that you're not using? So do you know what they've been involved in, or did you ask what they want to be involved in once they are here on your campus? Do you know that already? And do you have a communication plan to talk about that? If you don't have if you know that, but you're not talking about it, one, it shouldn't be on your application. Don't ask for things that your application's too long already, and you're asking for stuff that you're not then using. But if you do have it, we can turn around and make communication plans right away for that, or if you don't have it at all, use a survey as a way to engage them and talk to them right now. That's not necessarily apply, but what are you most interested in learning about if you were looking at our school? Give them options. So what they don't know on your end, you've designed this to really pull them into 4 or 5 different pools of communication that you're going to send to them afterwards, but you engage them without having to hard push apply. They had a conversation, and then you can follow up with very personalized communication after the fact, based on data that you collected in this survey. And then even looking at your print design and copy, not everybody can just go change, we understand travel brochures and view books are expensive, and many of them were printed ahead of time, but are you sending the same exact communication that you would have pre-COVID? And is that message resonating? Is there opportunities to look at, sending something smaller, postcards that are really specific to the times and what's going on right now, and or specific to where they fall on the funnel and where they're being held up? Nice thing about postcards, they're seen by students and by parents. So they're getting that opportunity. And even on those postcards, can you use snap codes to allow students to quickly go to a video or a website directly from there instead of having to type in a URL? And then some of the game changers. And I know we're getting tight on time, so I want to keep us moving, but show you a few things. First one, a little fuzzy to see, but I worked specifically with Xavier University in Louisiana last year. This was more of a yield than app gen piece, but this was a piece that really talking about the times. Instead of sitting at the end, like we're really excited about you coming back to coming to campus, this piece was really designed. I think is like mask up 6 feet, let's go. Like it was talking about being ready for COVID and moving on to campus, that they were ready. They had an insert from the president who has a medical background talking about why they were prepared for COVID and being on campus, even in these times, and how they were doing it. It talked about living on campus. It talked about food preparation. It really was not your average piece because it wasn't your average time. The second piece here, this really talks about the chatbot. So as you can see in this image here, it shows a little thing in the bottom right corner that shows like, hey, would you like to chat? Or, do you want to chat with somebody? And as soon as they click on that, it pops up into, like most chatbots pops up, but it is a little more direct of a piece that says, like, are you interested in learning more? Are you having issues opening it up? And what you're going through that process.
As mentioned earlier, so I've been secret shopping along in the way as well too, and so just kind of wanted to highlight a few things in terms of things that I think people are getting better at and really are doing a really nice job. I talked to a colleague, and one of the things that he said he had great success with was he called his students and just said, "It sucks right now. I get it. Like, it sucks for us. It sucks for you." He was like, "This is not your traditional process. It's not supposed to be like this. And I'm calling to say I'm a support in whatever that means to you. Does it mean that you are having trouble with the application? Then call me and we can walk through it together. Every one of you are completely different, and I want to be a support to you, whatever that looks like." And he got a huge response. Again, he didn't actually talk to anybody because he was leaving a bunch of voicemails, but students called him back because they appreciated the honesty and the frankness of recognizing that, yeah, it's tough. We're all in this bad situation together. Let's support each other and figure out how do we kind of still progress and still live our lives through this mess. University of West Virginia did an amazing live Instagram to where you actually voted on where you wanted to go next. And collectively, where the votes came in, that's where then they walked to that part of campus and then told you about that part of campus. And so really giving the users the ability to kind of choose their own experience and to choose how they saw the campus versus I'm going to show you and tell you exactly what I want you to do and how I want to. It's the closest to an actual opportunity for them to be on the campus and them to decide exactly what they're looking for. PC down here in South Carolina, I got this recently, just a couple of days ago. They are doing a vote on, again, their Instagram account of the best holiday movies. This immediately, I opened this one up because it doesn't say anything about applying. It doesn't say anything in terms of getting your application in or how important it is, but immediately I was drawn in and taken by this because it was just unique to them. It was interesting. It was something different. And then finally, Kent State, well, they did rented out a drive-in movie theater, and they basically did their virtual presentation, but they did it at a drive-in. So it was an experience. It was something that gets families out of the house and engaging, albeit 6 feet from each other, but they're engaging and they're getting to have a little bit of fun while they're learning about this information and while they're getting that information that is so critical to them, but they're doing it in such a unique way that it's memorable and that students are going to engage.
And Josh, I think one of the things you just said there is like they're doing it in a unique way. And so obviously our business is still our business of recruiting students, but how can we uniquely address the concerns, uniquely get in front of them? I actually had a call this morning where I talked with the school that they like everybody have been struggling. I think at their lowest point, they were down 37% in applications. This is a smaller school that I was talking to, but still 37% of a population is 37%. Well, right before the Thanksgiving break, they actually sent a message to students saying, tell you what, basically, again, coming with the messaging that this is real. Like, there's a lot of things that we're not very happy right now. A lot of things aren't going good, in our personal lives. Things are hard, but let's celebrate Thanksgiving with a win. If you apply by Wednesday, so they sent this like on the Monday of Thanksgiving. If you apply by Wednesday and send your unofficial transcripts, we will send you your acceptance. We'll send you a decision Thanksgiving morning for you to share with your family, regardless of how you're going to, if you're in person or if you're via Zoom with your family. We want you to have good news and something to be thankful for on Thanksgiving. And again, this is a small school. In those 2 days, they got 84 applications unofficially submitted because the unofficial transcripts, but they were able to generate that conversation and get apps in the door, which is really step one, right? We got to get these apps in order to happen. Now they're going to be redoing this in December with a, submit by whatever day they choose, Wednesday the 23rd, and we're going to kick your holidays off with something magical. We'll get your acceptance decision, something to share positive news over the holidays that may be on Zoom, that you may not get to see your family, but you can still share this news that you've been accepted to this school.
Oh, that totally just gives me chills. That's just, and think of it from the perspective of the student, that they have this incredible news that they could share with their family, whether that's, sitting at a table with them, whether it's Zooming and figuring out Thanksgiving on their own. But to be able to share some exciting news, I think it was such an impactful and such a genuine thing that just worked out to be so successful. So Corey, we've covered a lot. Where do we go from here?
But you got this. That's the thing we want to say is, and actually when I got off that call this morning and, the whole, we're all in this together and we're going to make it, it's going to happen. It's about being positive. So first and foremost, listen and act with empathy. People are going through real things. And I think of all industries, higher ed, we've always been a little more empathetic than a lot of other industries. It's just the nature of what we do. But with that empathy, be clear and precise in communications. Make sure that you're taking out the BS that doesn't need to be there, so they're not having to dig through to find what they need to know. And that goes with emails, that goes with messaging, that goes with landing pages if you make those. Be clear and concise. Use language they understand. Understand the conversation around affordability and act with empathy and be clear and concise and talk about that. The big one is research. Find where you're down. Don't just keep throwing things against the wall. Find the areas that you need to affect. Maybe don't do as much in a different area. Like I said, what can you drop and do something else? Challenge the static quo. Don't settle. I think that last example that I just gave is it. Like, that's nothing that we maybe wouldn't have done normally, but the timing was important. The messaging and the way they do it is not what they had normally done. They're challenging that. And I think one thing we have to be okay with is you might try something, it's not going to work. But my boss always says, my old boss always said, if you're trying something new and you fail, don't fail anything, you're not pushing the envelope hard enough. You need to at least have some hiccups along the road to know that you're going as far as you can. Josh mentioned it earlier. We need to create a strong yield plan. And, that whole pivot point, we're going to get apps in and we're going to keep asking for apps. But make sure you have that strong yield plan, summer melt plan, and going through it. And if you have support, use it. If your students that we talked about, I know there's some chat going over here about student takeovers. If your VPs are asking, what can we do? Get them on the phone. How cool would it be if a VP left a message like, I am the vice president of this school, and I'm here to let you know that we're here to listen and we want to help you. If you need anything, you can contact us. And Josh, you had an example of other people that could call, and just getting a cool call from other places on campus, even though they're not your typical person to call.
Absolutely. The business folks. I mean, they're the ones that know the students. They've got the stories. They can share that. And it doesn't have to be I know everything about the institution, or I know application deadlines, and we can find all that information out, right? But what you can have them connect with somebody to talk about their experience, or the experience that they're seeing in their students. And then if questions arise, just forward that over to the admissions office, and then you can follow up as well too, and have yet another touch point. So utilize your resources and the folks that you have across campus. And of course, then you can always call the Looney Bin as well too. So, we are really, truly, and we mean this, we are here to support you in every aspect that we can. Whether, of course, we love their formal agreements, but even if it's to throw off some ideas and to say, these are our challenges, I would love to be able to sit down with you for an hour and say, okay, let's figure it out. Let's see about a game plan. And yes, you can achieve some of these things, and then we can support you in other ways as well too.
Yeah, I think a unique thing about both of us is, we work in an agency life, but we both had over 10 years in the higher ed admissions life. That's what we breathe. That's what we enjoy. We joke about it. We have a lot of fun about it. We can talk about it a long time and enjoy talking about it. And so we are here to have those conversations. And we really, at this time, kind of want to, I think, open it up to see if there are any questions. I know there have been a few in the chat. If you wanted to post any in the chat. If not, you can always have follow-up conversations. You can contact us. We're both on LinkedIn. You can follow up with us and ask individual questions. Or, if you can find one of us or the other, always reach out. We're here for you. It's a crazy year. We're going to keep pushing forward. We're going to keep looking for new things to do. And it's not always about reinventing the wheel and finding the only thing that other schools aren't doing. It's just about doing what you do and do it well and do it with empathy and having those real conversations along the way.
So Beth, in terms of scheduling a meeting with us, you can shoot me an email. I'm Josh B at MediaCross. Corey, I think you're Corey B at MediaCross.com. You can always go to our website, MediaCross.com. All of our contact information is there. It should also, I think if you respond, you'll get this presentation in a couple of hours. And it should have our contact information in there as well too. You can respond directly to that email. But yeah, we'd love to kind of chat further with you. And just kind of to wrap us up, I know that we've kind of gone over the mark now, and probably another meeting you got to get to. But we just generally, we really authentically want to say thank you. We know, having been in the business for 10 years of us each, we know how valuable your time is. And we know that you guys are just killing it. And so we really do appreciate the time that you give us to sit here and chat with you. And we really, when we come to these conversations, we really, want to be able to provide some information, but some tactical ideas that you can hop off this call or this webinar and say, okay, let's get this to work. Let's start putting these into action. And we really, truly hope that we are able to give you some nuggets out there that you can utilize, and that it's done in an enjoyable space. So thank you. We really do appreciate it.
We do. And as always, for those who've come to previous, we always end in the same one. We're a bunch of nerds. So,
Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes!
Yeah, we're nerds, but of all times, more often than not, we need to be excellent. It's funny in that video, now that I watch it again, they're shocked by saying be excellent to each other. Yeah, we should. We all need to be excellent to each other. We need to be nice, reach out, look for support, even on a personal level. This is a thing just going on in my life right now where stress is getting it, anxiety is getting it. People are stressed, people are getting anxious, people are getting depressed. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and your loved ones out there. So everybody be safe, have a great holiday, reach out if you need anything, and look for the next Two Enrollment Guy webinar coming up in the next couple months.
Thanks all, Corey. It's always been a pleasure.
Yes, sir.